everyone, welcome back to my channel. Oh my gosh, the mosquitoes are eating me. My name is Lisa and this is Growing on Vancouver Island. Today is July the 8th, I believe, and I'm going to take you on a tour of our backyard vegetable garden. Here is a little overview of what the vegetable garden looks like today. The giant standard red raspberry bush that I have in the middle is completely inundating the garden. But let's take a look at the raspberries that it's been slowly producing. Here we are now inside the vegetable garden a little bit. And here's a look at some of the raspberries. This is actually my first time taking a close look at them this season, and I see we've got a few that look like they're ripe. Oh my goodness, it's actually pretty good. Slightly tart, but not bad. Here we've got another nice and ripe raspberry. And I'll do a little taste test. Very good. So this raspberry bush is just covered in raspberries. Very few are ripe yet. Those were like the first couple that I've had this season. But I'm gonna zoom in and see if you can see just how many unripe berries there are. So many of them are hidden underneath the foliage, but there are a ton of raspberries on this bush. So I'm really looking forward to that, since a lot of our fruit trees are not producing their best this year with our cold and wet spring we had and late frost. And here is one of my only kale plants, and it has just exploded. These leaves are so nice and large and just very lush. It's really loving our summer so far. We've had a few days over 30 degrees Celsius, and then the temperature tends to go back down to about 20 on average. So it's been a cool summer, but I'm not complaining because last year was too hot. In the corner here is my chamomile. It is a little flopped over, and I'm probably gonna pick some soon and dry it out to make some tea. Here is one of my beefsteak tomato plants. No flowers on it yet, but it is growing pretty well finally, and I need to find it a stake because I don't have one for it yet. And in this area here is my second beefsteak tomato plant. It's growing exceptionally well finally, and it's got just a couple little flowers on it, so that's super exciting. I did not know it was flowering, so that's looking promising. In front of me here is some of my many alpine strawberry plants. We've got flowers on them as well as little berries forming. They're taking forever to ripen. They're not even remotely close to finishing and growing in size or ripening, but we do have a ton of them on all of my alpine strawberry plants. Here is just a beautiful calendula that I let this calendula reseed from last year, and it's doing absolutely wonderful in this spot. And behind the calendula are my peas, which I think you can hardly see. There's one way at the back in here, and my other one has attached itself to the calendula, and there's a couple over there that are, I guess one of them, oh wow, one of them has really shot up. Two of them have. I haven't really looked at my garden in a few days, so I guess there's been a major growth spurt, which is awesome. And even a little flower, the first flower of this year's pea season in July. Normally we're finished pea season by sometime in June, but this year we've hardly started. Our weather is so strange. Here we have some lovely looking lettuce beside my bok choy, which once again bolted. In the end, all of my pak choy and all of my bok choy all bolted, unfortunately, with our wacky weather that we had this season. And somehow in the midst of my garden, I ended up with a couple poppy flowers. I try really hard not to get poppies in my garden because I don't really want any plant that's potentially toxic growing in my garden, but somehow they ended up here. So I am going to let them bloom out themselves. I am going to let them bloom, but I probably won't let them go to seed, just to have a little color this year, but we don't want the seeds spreading everywhere in the vegetable garden. Here is another look at the back side of the raspberry bush. Lots of immature little raspberries everywhere. And in this corner, we have my potato plants. I have quite a few in this small corner here. And they're very tall, but they have actually flopped over and they have not bloomed yet. I haven't harvested any, but I have been contemplating just pulling one plant out and just checking what's underneath. I know typically if you want a good harvest, you want to wait until after they've bloomed. But it is already July and there's no sign of flowers yet. So I'm not really sure if I should do that or just wait a little longer. And here is my poor little pumpkin plant that was mutilated by the garden supervisor in our last video. And it is not looking its best self. It's forming a flower, which I don't even know if that's a good thing because it's looking so pathetic. It's still alive, I guess that's a good thing, but really not doing super well. So who knows if we'll ever get a pumpkin out of it. Here are some of the onions that I planted this spring, early spring. I planted onions both from bulbs and from onion sets, and I have harvested one already. They're actually growing pretty well. So it's my second time ever growing onions. The first time all the bulbs rotted, but this time they're actually growing. So I'm so excited about that. I do think they need more time in the ground. The one I picked was probably one of the biggest ones, and it had grown quite a bit, but I think it could still get bigger, the bulb. So I'm gonna leave the rest of them for a bit longer, although I'm going to pluck off these little flower heads that are starting to form because I don't really want that to be where the energy is going to go. And over here is my garlic, some of my garlic. This batch, it was from an elderly neighbor, and I plucked off all the scapies or scrappies or whatever they're called on all of my garlics, and we did eat them. I had some and I gave a lot to my parents, and they were very good. And now we're just waiting for the garlic bulbs to form. I think it's going to be a while because they're not really yellow or brown on this patch here. Coming this way, this is my collection of beets, which makes me super excited. I grew these from seed, and a previous year I had attempted to grow them from seed and I didn't even get a sprout. And this year I have a whole collection of beets in this area, as well as quite a few weeds mixed in. But I am so excited that I'm actually going to have some beets. They might be a little too close together, so they're probably going to be really small. But at least I was successful in growing something from seed. So that's really fun. I might even harvest some greens for my salads. But I am very happy with my beets so far. And beside the beets, we have a potato plant, I think. This is self-seeded, and it definitely looks like a potato plant to me, so I'm assuming that's what it is. And over here is one of my squash plants. I would say this is the one that's doing the best out of my collection. And I actually can't remember which variety this is. I have like an acorn squash, a honey nut squash, and a spaghetti squash, I believe. And I thought I had labels, but they seem to have disappeared. So it'll be a surprise what this is. Beside it is another squash that's still in its little garden clutch to protect it from the garden supervisor. And here is another squash being protected by, actually no, this is a cucumber that I planted a couple days ago from my containers that I had too many, and it's doing very well here. In this corner are a few sunflowers that I planted from seed, and some crocosmia that always seems to end up in my garden. Don't ask me how, but it always ends up here. Coming to the middle, we have a tomato plant that's self-seeded here. So I'm gonna let it grow and see what it does for me. And at the back is my garlic called Music. This one is further along than my other garlic. Don't think it's quite ready to harvest, but it's a lot closer than the other one with all of its yellow and brown leaves. So that'll be exciting to sample that. And we have a casualty here, a raspberry casualty. This is my, oh dear. This is a bush that definitely needs staking. Let's see if I can prop it up. So here is the raspberry bush that I was just showing you. I just propped it up with a stick, and it looks like it has some raspberries that might be ripe on it. I did not know that. This is one of my more exotic raspberry bushes. It's either a golden raspberry, I can't remember exactly the name, fall gold maybe, or it might be my ever-bearing raspberry honey queen. Both varieties are pretty pale yellow. I think this is probably honey queen, and they kind of go a yellowy orange color, and they taste so delicious. So I'm gonna try this one and just see. Oh, it's maybe not ripe. Here's one that looks a little. So here is the raspberry. It's falling apart in my hand. And let's see what this one tastes like. My first one of this variety this season. It's good, but it almost tastes like it got too much water. And I think that's from all the rain we've been getting. We've had such a wet spring and early summer. So I think they almost got a little too much water, but I'm not complaining. Berries are good. All berries are good. So it's just a little more watery than I would have expected it to be, but still delicious. And our garden supervisor, Mr. Zipper, has decided to join in on the last part of tonight's tour. At the back of my garden, I haven't really talked about these plants before. These are massively overgrown lemon balms, and I did not plant these at all. I only ever planted 2 lemon balm plants in my yard, both in containers, and let me tell you, they spread all over the entire yard. And I will never get rid of these ones. I've tried this so many times. They are so deeply rooted into the soil, and we have super rocky soil here, so it's pretty much inevitable that they're here to stay unless I ever get a bulldozer, which probably isn't going to happen. They do smell beautiful. The bees love them, but they are pretty invasive. And these 2 little guys right here beside the volunteer tomato plant are watermelon plants. This one and this one here. We've got weeds everywhere. I haven't had the time lately to properly weed, and we are inundated with some pretty invasive weeds. I should really pluck some of these. This is also watermelon here. They're doing okay. They definitely could be doing better. They're healthy. They're just growing really, really slowly. And this one here too, you can hardly see it. It was a watermelon plant that got eaten. And this one was not eaten by Zipper. It was eaten by probably a bug of some sort. That's going to be all for this evening. I hope you enjoyed our quick little tour. I hope you are having a wonderful evening wherever you are, and we will see you in the next video. Good night.